Hi, guys. Welcome back to Cupcakes and Protein Shakes. I am your host, Savannah, and we're doing an episode where I interview a fellow athlete about her journey to the stage and how she found bodybuilding. So, introduce your name, tell us where you are from.
I'm Joanie Nacke, and I am from Olympia, Washington.
Okay, welcome to the show. So, I like to tell people like how maybe we either got connected or like found each other. So, how did we kind of meet?
Actually through Angel Competition Bikinis. I have been doing some work with Angel and ordered my new suit and really love the company and was connected with Lexi. And then Lexi kind of just, made connections here and there. And then you and I met, and here we are.
I know it's a small world. So like the competing world is like such, even though you're across the country or wherever, it's like it's such a small little niche world. So I think it's fun, like how these little connections add up. And now we're here and we're on a podcast. But we had a phone call and I was like, you just seem like you have such an interesting story to share. And I wanted just to give you an opportunity to share your story and just tell us about how you became an athlete. How did this journey start for you, and where did the fitness journey start?
Yeah. I've been an athlete pretty much my whole life. I did jazz, tap, and ballet from the time I was like 3 years old, all the way through like college dance team. And then also when I was in middle school, middle school and high school, you put me in any sport. I did volleyball, I did track, I did softball, I did basketball, like anything you could put me in, I would do it. I loved sports. I actually found bodybuilding from a different avenue though. I went into, this isn't my first career. Right now what I do for a career is I'm a personal trainer, I'm a coach, and I do nutritional consulting and all that sort of thing. But for 16 years prior to this, I was in politics and government affairs, and I have a political science degree. And I found bodybuilding because I reached a really low point in my life where I ended up being diagnosed with anorexia, and I was admitted to to an in-person facility, and it was my hardest point, actually, I think pretty much my whole life. And when I was in my recovering process from my eating disorder, I'd been doing nutrition, and then of course like got back into doing more weightlifting because I'd become a cardio bunny trying to like change things up. And I went to a show and I was like, you know what, I can do this. I want to do that. I really want to do that. And yeah, bodybuilding's saved my life then and a few times since then.
Wow. Wow, that's exciting. Wow, that's amazing. And you're not alone. There's a lot of competitors, are struggling with some type of eating disorder, and then they find therapy through gym, through nutrition, and start to kind of connect the dots of, oh my goodness, food is fuel and I don't need to be scared of it. And it's actually a tool. And if you manipulate it right, you can look exactly how you ever wanted to look.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting to me too, because even people that are kind of like naysayers when it comes to like recovering from my eating disorder and stuff, I feel like you're always recovering. And I've had some people that have in a negative way said that I've just replaced my eating disorder with bodybuilding. And honestly, it's like, so what? So what if I have? Because if anything, it's healthier, because even in my building phases, I'm focused on I have to eat more. Like I have to eat, I have to consume more. I have to, face a lot of those things. And then even when I'm in prep, like I am now, my peak week is today, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Thank
starting
you.
my peak week. So if I'm a little batty, that's probably why. But even then it's like I've got a coach, and all the food that I am eating, it's for a reason, it's for a purpose. And so even people that sit there and say that I might have replaced my eating disorder with bodybuilding, it's like you got to brush that off.
Like in my opinion, there's worse things that you could be addicted to besides exercise. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like you could have
Exactly.
picked up a lot different habits that weren't going to, help your lifestyle. And it's very interesting to me that they can't be happy for you.
Yeah.
And like, just be happy. Like, she's happy. She figured it out. This is what works for her. It has no effect on you. And that's how it should be. And everyone's journey is different. And everyone's, health journey, mental journey is different. And I'm glad that you are on the road to recovery, because it is a long-term process. But there's girls that aren't. And so they're probably going to listen to this and they're just like, how did you do it? Like, what was the steps? What advice would you have for someone that maybe is still struggling with something like that? Like, how could they get out of it? What really changed for you?
Yeah, so it has been a long-term thing. I was diagnosed in 2016, and after that I was told that I needed to go to an inpatient facility because I was so bad. Um it was the worst that I had gotten. And I tried doing this program for a while, for a couple of months, and I didn't really have direction. I didn't know where I was going. And then finally one day, the nutritionist and the therapist that they had me meeting with, um, basically met me with a contract that said if I didn't start making improvements within the next month, that I would be asked to leave the program. And I didn't know what improvements meant. I didn't know, like, there was no, they just said I needed to eat more, but I didn't, at that point, I was eating. When I was admitted, I was having a V8 and a Kind bar once every couple of days. And when I was in the program and they sat me down pretty much with this ultimatum, and they told me to eat more, at that point I was consuming an Ensure and a Kind bar every day. So I'm like, I'm eating more. Like, I had no idea what they were talking about. Like, I'm like, what do you mean I need to eat more? So anyway, I left the program at that point because I wasn't getting the direction that I needed. And my next step, because I felt lost, but I knew that I couldn't just go back to what I was doing because I was still very, very sick. So I looked for a therapist, and I finally found one that actually, like, connected with me, and it felt like I was talking to a friend. It felt like I was talking to somebody where she wasn't judging me or, telling me what I should do or what I should think. So I'd say for those that are still struggling, my first real huge step wasn't even being diagnosed or getting in a program. My first huge step was finding a therapist that actually worked well for me. Um, and then after that, I was just doing therapy 3 times a week, for quite a few months. And then one of my friends who I'd not been connected to in a while, but I met her in college. She was a fitness model. She had been competing. She's done ads for like Nike and like major, major companies and whatnot. And she opened up a fitness studio in my area and was doing nutritional coaching. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to go to a nutritionist, I'm going to go to somebody that I know. So I went to her. And looking back on it, actually, she totally baby stepped me. She did meal plans with me, but going from an Ensure and a Kind bar to 6 meals a day, even though they were smaller meals, it still took a lot of trust and being open to what could happen. And then so then that was my second step after doing therapy for a long time. And then after that, I added in the weight training to it, and then everything kind of went from there. But I would say for those that they're still struggling, therapy is definitely the first step that you need to take, because honestly, eating disorders or not, people think that they're a vanity issue, and they're not. They're a coping mechanism and they're a control issue. And you have to find out the underlying reasons why and find new coping mechanisms and new coping skills before you can really make progress. But I also think that's why people like get so confused about how bodybuilding has been so good for me, because they think bodybuilding is a vanity sport as well. And they don't understand that. Like they see the bikini division and they just don't get, they don't, I think people understand figure better than they do figure, or like some of the other divisions a bit better. And then they see bikini, and bikini is more feminine, and bikini has more of like the flirtatious, even though figures kind of moved there a little bit, but it has more of like the flirtatious stuff to it. And I think it's just it's a misconception about both the sport and then also the disorder itself. I took a roundabout there.
No,
Sorry.
yeah, no, this is good. This is good details. Like I've always felt that push of like, oh, like you're just a bikini, like you're just flaunting your stuff around. And like one of my goals was this, like to open up the podcast, to open up YouTube, and just be like, this is a sport. Like we are athletes. We might not be the structure of a figure, like muscle wise, or like, but it's like we are working just as hard. It's just different. You only get to see, the highlight reel on Instagram on show day. And so, yeah, that day it is a flaunt your stuff, but it was a journey to get there. It took, like, you don't know how hard it is to, stay that disciplined on your routine and your diet and all the mental struggles that you have to go through in order to get that way. There's a gap between like, when before I even like got into the sport, I was one of the people that really judged girls that got up there and was like, oh my gosh, no, like they're like basically like strippers up there. Like
Yeah.
they're showing their butt cheeks to the world and whatever, flaunting around. And then I did my first show and was like, this is not exact, like this is not the same. Like this is completely different. Like this is a sport.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting too that you bring that up about also about the misconception with what it takes to actually look that way and to get to stage. Now that I'm in my new career, so I'm not in politics anymore, and I'm doing what is a passion of mine, like I call it my passion profession. Um, it's interesting to see what people think. Like, I'm working with women all the time, and there really is that misconception that you're going to lift weights and all of a sudden you're going to get bulky. And it's like, you realize how long I've been doing this, trying to like just gain like a couple of pounds of muscle. Like it's not that easy. And then also like with nutrition and that sort of stuff, especially other women, trying to get them to understand that you don't just wake up and compete. Like you don't just, I don't just live my life. I don't and then decide I'm going to do a show next weekend. Like this is intentional. My last show was Universe in July, and I took from July all the way until January and did a very intensive build to make some changes. And that's increasing, calories and pushing food and changing my training style to push weights and all that sort of stuff. And then in January is when I started my cut, but I didn't really announce it at that point. And it's been interesting because I work in a fitness studio, and it's really only been these last couple of weeks because you really start to see like the changes like are pretty substantial at that point. They don't see the little coming down, they see the big change. And now everybody's like, oh, like it's like, yeah, you don't just wake up and compete. You don't just, this is all of it's intentional, and it takes a ton of work.
Yeah, it is not like stage lean is not, there's not a lot of people that can naturally just jump on stage like, oh yeah, 1 week of cutting. Yeah, this is how I look all the time. Like I wish I walked around like this. It is so hard just to get that conditioning and that just like stage lean look, to be full, to be balanced, to have enough muscle from top to bottom, all the practicing and posing. So yeah, when we get up on there, we make it look like it's easy. It looks easy. It's like, oh, I
It's
could do
supposed
that.
to look easy. Yeah, it's supposed to look easy, but
Those poses that can do, like that is not, it is not easy at all. And it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of discipline to get there. And you said you just finished are you like, where are you at currently? Are you in a cut for what show?
oh, so this is my peak week. Today is day one of my peak week, and the show that I'm doing is the Pacific Coast Championship, and it is in Lincoln City, Oregon, which I've never done an Oregon show before. So, and it's
Yeah.
Mother's Day weekend, and I'm a single mom, and my daughter gets to come with me. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah. Okay. So how many shows have you done so far? What show is this?
This is my 12th. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
This
that's a
is
lot.
my 12th. This is so I started competing in 2017, and my first year I did 5 shows. Um,
Gee.
I didn't, I guess you live and you learn. You live and you learn, but I didn't listen to what I preach now. And what I preach now is you need time away from stage to make changes. But that first year, I was just dead set. Like it was like, I mean, if anything, I got more stage presence that year, but I was in prep the entire year. But one thing that I did do right is I was nationally qualified my first year that I was competing, but I didn't compete at the national level until 2020. Um, which that was a rough year to do your first national competition during COVID, but I did. I have not earned that pro card yet, but I'm still working hard and still have that dream to do that. So this is the first show that I'm doing this year. It is a local show, it's a regional show. But then my goal is to compete in the North Americas in September and give it another go at the pro card.
Yeah. Okay. So I started Journey 2017 as well. It's first national show, 2020 as well, during the COVID year. I don't, what national show did you get on stage in 2020?
I did Masters Nationals when it was in Orlando in October. It got moved like 3 times in different locations, and yeah, that was wild.
Yeah, I
That was a
competed
full
in
year of prep. It was a full year of prep.
I was in 2020, I prepped for a full year because I was doing January, I was prepping for USA's in July. March time, COVID happens. They push it to December. So I stay in prep optimistically. Then it got like removed. And then the closest national show that I wanted to do was North Americans in September, did September, then decided I want to do another one. I want to do the one I originally did. So just kept pushing till December and then ended up in the entire year of prep. Crazy. Like we had North Americans, it was when it was in a tent
Yeah. Oh,
outside.
so what's interesting is I was actually so I was on prep right before COVID hit for a local regional show. That show got completely canceled, but I had already planned on doing a national show that year. So I stayed in prep, and I was actually aiming for the North Americas, but I was coaching myself too, which actually I learned a ton on that one as well, and hired a coach after that because I tanked myself. Um, but I didn't think I was ready for North Americas, and I remember watching it though, and it was in the tent, and I'm in Pittsburgh in like
It
really
was
like so
raining and then
cold.
it was like a rainy day. So like my hair was like so frizzy. The second I got into the tent, I mean, it was no air conditioning. It was like muggy, hot. I had straightened my hair for the first time and like I have naturally like thick curly hair. So by the time class H, the very last bikini class got on stage, I was like sweating all over. My hair had frizzed up. I had curly hair on stage. It had gone curled. It looked horrible. It looked disgusting. Then on stage, the stage lights were so hot. My tan, I'm a sweater when I'm nervous. I legitimately sweated my tan till the point where it dripped down my like cleavage while I'm on stage. So I get off stage and there's this picture of me with just tan drips all.
Oh
I was
my
like,
God.
I was like, this was an experience. No audience. There was legitimately a judging table like 20 feet away. So everyone was spread out. The judges were like 5 feet from each other. It was so weird. Mrs. Bikini Olympia, Angelica was there. I met her and I was like, okay, well, I was like, I mean, I got 14th, but I'm like,
It's
that
an
was not,
experience.
it
Oh
was,
my
it
gosh.
was honestly one of my most favorite shows because like It was just crazy. It was crazy. It was my first time. And so having your first time, like during all of that stuff, like my parents tried to watch the live stream and then it like cut out on the ends because it was, I don't even know what happened. Like I have no video. There's no video anywhere of class H because the live stream was like, it just, you couldn't see anything. So yeah, that was an experience. But what made you decide to coach yourself? I think this is always so interesting when athletes decide to make that decision. Why did you coach yourself and what did you learn? How did you try to do it?
Yeah, so I made the decision to coach myself. So I had been with so the gal that I went to for nutrition that I was talking about before, she was my coach all the way up until 2018. So all through 2017, 2018, and then in 2019 I did one show, but I was kind of in the process of a divorce. I was like changing careers. I was doing all these different things. And so the person that I had coach me to my show in 2019, I was working at his gym. And so then when 2020 happened and I was kind of like looking at the national show and whatnot, I didn't want to find a new coach. And I had sort of gone through the process in my head where it's like I've been through how many preps now, like each prep is unique, but in my head I thought, well, they can't be all that different. And then also part of what I had thought in my head at the time, though, too, was that I'm my own worst critic. So therefore, that'll make me the best coach for myself because I'm my own worst critic. And all of that ended up like, I mean, I didn't do horrible in Orlando. I got 7th, which that's not awful. And my stage shots and stuff like that, I'm not ashamed of it. I didn't do awful. I just could have done a lot better. What I ended up doing is, again, this isn't going to come to a surprise probably for many people who I just talked about being anorexic, but I didn't do my fill out. Like I refused to eat. I got down to Orlando and I thought I can't eat. I can't eat. Like I can't. And like my fill out food was like a rice cake and some peanut butter. I mean, and when I got on stage, I was flat. And all that sort of stuff. So what ended up being what I thought was going to be a strength of mine ended up being my like the worst thing. But I ended up looking for a coach. I mean, again, all of this stuff, I can't sit there and like bash myself too badly about it, like doing the 5 shows or doing my national show during COVID and coaching myself and all that kind of stuff. I've learned every single time. And I've come out better because of it every single time. So, I mean, I think that's something that's indicative. Sorry, my dog and my cat are having like World War III back there.
It's okay.
But I think it's something that's kind of like indicative of the sport, like if you go into it thinking that you're just going to get a placing or a tiara or a trophy every single time, you're setting yourself up for freaking failure. Like what you should go in what I've learned and what I love about it is that you should go into each show expecting to learn something new and come out of it better because of that, regardless of if you place. And I think that's also one thing too, when I came back from Orlando and I got 7th, then the next show that I did was the Ben Weider show in DC the following year. And I did what people thought was worse. Like I placed lower, but they didn't understand that they're different shows. Like they're different shows. There's different people that show up. Like you can't compare placing to placing. It's an apples to oranges thing. But so yeah, anyway, I don't know where I was going with that.
I know. Yeah. Okay. So it's a good point that you brought up too. Like it is very like this is a very hard to like bodybuilding in bikini is subjective and it's very hard for an outsider that doesn't know anything about it to conceptualize what we do, how we're actually athletes, and then understanding that like sometimes we're the happiest when we like didn't win, like you can bring this crazy amazing package and be so proud of this journey and this prep and who you are at the end, and it doesn't really matter how you did, even if like it's just kind of the cherry on top of like, oh yeah, I ended up getting X placing or whatever. And they're very confused because they're looking for you to be like, oh, I got seventh or I got not first. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And you're like, no, 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 this is great. Like,
Yeah,
this is
don't be
amazing.
sorry.
Yeah, like don't be sorry for me. Like this is such a great show. Like even if you went from seventh to eight or lower, right? It could have been way more competitive. It could have been a harder show. It could have been your best physique. But again, apples orange day and you were in orange and they wanted apples. Like you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know because it is it's not a very like the criteria is there and there is certain standards like balance, muscularity, but at the end of the day, it is a preference for the judging panel. And you're never going to be against the exact same group of girls. And there, even if you had the same group of girls and you competed against them next weekend, that conditioning is different.
Yep.
Everyone's body is different. So even if it's the same competitors, it's not the same physiques that you're going against. Sometimes they'll be harder and you'll be softer, or you'll be softer and they'll be harder. It's kind of like the Goldilocks syndrome. It's just like a little bit of luck, keep showing up until you perfect your best, whatever that look is, and just hope that on that day they like it and whoever is next to you didn't bring it. And that's kind of how it works, really.
Right.
It's just, but you have to, like you said, go into it knowing that placing isn't everything. And if you can do that, you'll have a lot more success and longevity and be able to do 12 shows and keep going and keep it up, even if you do have placings that aren't first place, because it's never going to be like everyone is beatable. It's not, it's so like even pros, even
Yeah, look at
Mrs.
the Olympia. I mean, you see that especially in the past couple of years, you've seen that quite a bit with the bikini
Mhm.
division and some major upsets that have, happened and whatnot.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think it's actually one thing that's interesting that made me think when you were talking, that made me think of what you get out of it. When I did Universe this last year in July, and it was actually so when I got brought onto stage, so you can't videotape or anything like that in the audience. And my teammate Nancy, she actually won her pro card, but in physique the day prior. So she was in the audience when I was competing in bikini the next day, and she could take pictures. You just can't take video. And what gave me the most fire was actually a picture that she took where I was in the lineup with the woman that won her pro card in my class. And if you look at me in a silo, you would say like I looked great. Like I thought my glutes looked good. I thought everything like that. I looked good. But then when you saw me next to the woman that won her pro card, like legitimately right next to her, you could see I was tiny compared to her. And I'm also a tall girl. I'm 5'7". So like, we got longer limbs that we need. It's harder for us to like fill out our frame and our shape with like muscle and building muscle and all that sort of stuff. And when you saw me next to her, it's like the coaches or the judges have always said more muscle, like bigger glutes, bigger rounder glutes. Like, I've been working on my glutes since 2017 and it's like bigger glutes, bigger glutes. And when I saw that photo that my teammate Nancy took, it's what gave me the absolute fire to commit to July to January of being in a caloric surplus and pushing as heavy and as hard as I have, and the program that I did, and like I legitimately changed the shape of my glutes and the size of my glutes. And like from tape measurements and things like that, you can tell. And from the photos, the check-in photos with my coach, you can compare like the side photos from last prep to this prep, and you can actually see the glute growth and stuff. And it's just like it took what most would consider a failure. So it took that failure to get me to commit to and make the progress that I have. And I'm so excited to get on stage for this show, not because I think that, I need to win an overall or I'm going to win or this or that or this or that. it's because I'm actually excited to show the changes that I made. Like I'm excited to be like this brand new package. Like, and I wouldn't have gotten that if it wasn't for what some might consider a failure at Universe.
Yeah,
It's yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I love that because you really don't know until you go. You don't know if you're on the mark, especially if you're going for a pro card. Like when you're toe to toe with girls that literally turn pro and you're like, oh, now I see what they mean. And now I understand. So, yes, I have built these glutes, but when I stand next to someone else with like perfectly pro level glutes, it's very apparent of like, I see the target. Now I've seen it side by side. And it's like
yeah,
a visual thing of like, oh my gosh, I need to push so much harder. I thought I was pushing hard, but there's another level to this. And I'm so motivated because I see it on her and I want it. And I'm so close. And you have that picture and you have that side by side, and you have the feedback. So then, like going into the gym, you just probably imagining that girl's glutes on
yeah.
your butt and you're like, oh my gosh, I want that. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. And it's the, one of the most powerful things about bodybuilding is that hard work does make an impact on your physique. It's the only thing that I've been able to find where like the harder that you work, you can see the physical representation of that hard work in 16 weeks, in 3 months. Like that is a long time, but it's in the long term. Like it's really not that. Like you can dramatically change
Yeah.
your physique in one prep if you change your training, change all this different stuff. And it's so interesting because it's like, okay, what was I doing? What do I need to manipulate? Is it how I'm training? Is it my intensity? Is it my diet? Is my peaking off? There's all these different variables that go into creating your perfect package. And, even 12 shows deep, there's always improvements to be made every
Oh,
single.
absolutely. Absolutely. But that's another thing too. So since I've been doing this for so long, kind of in this area, I've gotten to know a lot of the promoters and the judges and stuff in the Pacific Northwest. And now I help out at a lot of the regional shows. Like they have me on as staff and I actually work them and that sort of thing. And I was having a conversation with two of the promoters earlier this year when I was working at one of the shows down in Vancouver, and they were asking me when I was going to compete again and what show I was going to do. And, we're just kind of like chatting and all that sort of thing. And I said to them, I was like, when it comes down to it, like some people, their goal is just to get their pro card and then they never compete again because all they want is that IFBB pro card and then they never compete again. And that is their goal. But that's not my goal. My goal is not only do I want to earn that pro card, but I want to earn that pro card and then I want to compete in the IFBB. So I feel like it's different. I don't want to just go to, because we were talking about the notion how some people will like show shop because they're giving out more pro cards at that show, or there's less people that show up at that show, so you're more likely to get your pro card at that show, or this or that. And it's like that doesn't come into it for me because I'm not doing it I don't want to earn a pro card and then be laughed at when I go into the IFBB. Like I want to do it and then actually continue to compete. And so I think it's also like one of those things too, where you've got to look at like your reason why, like, why are you doing this sport? Are you in it for the long term? Are you a one and doneer? I just want to get to the IFBB and then no longer do that and just check that box, have that credential on my, Instagram and then be done. I think a lot of it is like you said, finding your why, like, and then is that going to motivate you to be in this sport for the long term?
Yeah, like that's always why I've never cared about when. I've always thought like the goal is yes, it's actually not. The goal has never been a pro card. It has been to be competitive pro, to use that for like helping fitness and everything. And once you kind of have that why and like that internal push, then it doesn't really matter when. And when you kind of take that pressure of, oh, it has to be at this show, it has to be at this show, and you just focus like, no, it's going to happen when it's going to happen. All I want to do is just improve. I want to improve. I'm not going to go back into a prep until I know I've improved, because long term, if I want to get on stage and earn that card, I want to not only earn it. I don't want a second place pro card. I want a 100% undeniable. That was the winner. Clearly smoked everyone. Go into immediately can go do a pro debut the next weekend and maybe place. Like,
Yeah.
taking this time off is going to help you be a more competitive pro once you get there because it's inevitable and you're putting in the work now. Because if you do a one and done, or if you do an extreme prep and you do end up getting a pro card, but now you've destroyed metabolism and health and hormones, you're going to have to take an off season somewhere to put in the work to get to a competitive pro. So sometimes that's going to happen for a lot of athletes as an amateur. And those of us that take a little bit longer to earn a pro status, it's honestly, I think it's a benefit the longer it takes you, because now you have 12 shows under
Right.
your belt. It's not a two, like sometimes like girls will go pro in 2 shows and then they have to take a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years as a pro to perfect their look, get more stage time. And you already have that. So it's only to your benefit. And like when you get that card, you're going to earn it. And it's going to be appreciated because it was hard, because it took you like that much long, like a long time to achieve it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I also think it's one thing too that like with my daughter, she can't come with me to the national shows because I mean, but a lot of people are like, why can't she? And it's like, well, I'm a single mom, so my coach is gonna, if my coach goes with me, she's gonna be there for me. She's, I don't have a babysitter or something like that, and plus it's expensive. So having her go with me to the national shows is not really an option. Um, so it makes it that much more special when I'm doing a local show like this one, so she can see it. But then it's also one thing her and I've talked about. So she's 11 now, and she's understanding things differently. And like, cognitive development, stuff like that is happening preteen. Some of the other stuff's happening too, which is like, but um she's starting to understand some of this stuff a little bit better. And one of the things I've more recently realized is the impact that this has on her in a positive way. Like I'm showing her what it takes to go after a long-term goal and a long-term dream and not give up. Like I'm showing her what hard work looks like. I'm showing her what discipline is like about, I mean, there's mornings I don't want to get up for cardio and I'm freaking exhausted. And I've got an early morning client for personal training or something, but I still have to get my cardio in. So I'm up at 3:30 in the morning to get that done before I get in. And it's like, I've kind of reached a new level of how this is a positive impact on like even my daughter's life, because it's showing her and teaching her some pretty valuable lessons just by doing what I'm doing and leading from example.
Yeah, I really like that too, because now it's like there you have a cheerleader. And so when it does get hard, it's like, okay, it's not just about me now. It's not like this is for your clients. Now you're a role model for your clients. Practice what you preach to them as a trainer, as a coach. If I'm telling them to push harder in the gym, I better make sure that I got my cardio in that day, or even for her, of like teaching her like this is important. It's important to be healthy. Food is fuel. Working hard, you will see the results, and like being able to be like, okay, not every day you're going to win, and it's okay, but you learn. Like that's huge.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So, with your journey, is there any notable mistakes that you've made along the way?
Oh gosh, a ton. um a ton. I think my um I think the biggest thing for me was it, or has been my biggest struggle, which is actually being on stage. Um, you would think that with my background in dance and that sort of stuff, it wouldn't be that big of an issue for me. But dance is choreographed, it's choreographed to music. You're usually getting up there with a team that are doing the same thing with you. and you're not in a thong most times, things like that. And I also have I didn't talk about this, but I also have triple scoliosis, so my spine is much different than a lot of people, and you can't really tell from looking at me, but when you see the x-rays you can. So being some of the poses and stuff that you have to hold for bikini, like I can't physically twist the way that they do. So I think my biggest misstep and mistake in the very beginning was not putting enough emphasis on posing and not putting enough time on perfecting that. And that's something that post universe I took really seriously as well. And I hired a different coach, Maya Gordon. She's from Canada. Love her, and she's fantastic. She has worked with me. She knows that I have scoliosis, and so she's worked with me pretty much throughout my entire off season. And yeah, I think posing has been the biggest thing for me. And that's another thing I'm super excited about is I've put more time and effort and energy into posing than I ever have before. And I feel like even this morning I sent a video to my coach and I looked at it and I'm like, that's the best posing I've ever done. Like, I'm just like really excited. I'm really excited to show the judges and then have my kiddo in the audience and stuff. But I would say that that's one thing that I feel like is a misstep for not only a lot of beginning athletes, but is also a misconception about the sport too. Like people don't realize how hard posing is. They don't realize how difficult and sometimes painful it can be. And I feel like first time athletes probably do not spend enough time, especially on their first prep or their first couple of shows, really doing it. Like you need to be, I know it's uncomfortable to pose when you are thick or thicker and you're building and your body fat is higher. And, you see these girls that are posting their shredded like check-in photos on Instagram, and you really don't want to be in a bikini like posing, but you need to, like, you don't have to post it on Instagram, but
No.
you need to be spending the time posing and doing it and sitting with being uncomfortable, because if anything, that's only going to benefit you if you know how to move your body. And then once you start shredding and coming down, your confidence is going to start going up when you're like, oh, okay, well, this is actually looking better. And like, I see this and that. But yeah, I would emphasize posing to the nth degree because it has been my greatest struggle with the sport.
I support this decision, and yes, like 100%. That posing is what separates an amateur from a pro. It is. It really is. When it comes down between first and seconds, it's not really about the physique at that point. Sometimes it is confidence. And that's something that you have to practice. It doesn't come naturally for everyone, especially in a small bikini on stage. Those poses are hard. It is unnatural to be twisting one way and twisting the other, and holding and sucking in and
Holding it. And yeah,
like you're holding a full body plank essentially for, I mean, 10, 15 minutes at a time, like maybe more, maybe longer, depending on how long they have you up there. And if you are not conditioned in posing, like it doesn't matter how great you pushed in the gym. It doesn't matter how great your shoulders look compared to last time. It doesn't matter that you did have the best body. If the judges cannot see it displayed properly, then you wasted your whole prep.
yeah.
Really. All that,
Well,
like, don't, yeah.
interesting is like, so I used to joke so it wasn't at the beginning when I first started competing in 2017. This was probably a couple years into it. I would joke with people that if I could just get up on stage in my sports bra and my shorts, like I would be fantastic. Like I would joke about that. And I remember I was having a conversation with my current coach and I said that, and she's like, well, that's never going to win you a pro card. Like, you're never going to earn a pro card in a sports bra and shorts and stepping on stage. So you got to put your effort into, posing. And I'm like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
wow, okay, you're right. I should stop joking about that and actually take it seriously. Like even though I was uncomfortable with it, I would still, it was almost like taking my medicine, right? Like I'd get to a certain part of prep and I'd be like, okay, I can do it now. I'll start posing now. And it's like, dang, I really, I learned. It took me a little longer than most. I learned, but just don't underestimate posing ever.
Ever, 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 ever. So please, please, please start posing. It's just as important, if not more. So if like you're putting in the reps and your physique is changing, right? It does work. You got to put in the reps and posing. Your routine, it should suck at the beginning. It should be horrible. It should be hard. But with practice, you'll get good at anything, but you have to not avoid it and literally just do it because it is super uncomfortable when you are not stage lean and you see your physique and you're like, this does not look how it's supposed to. It is not fun. It's not fun to be
I
in a stage
know.
at all. And it's like way too tight or something. And you're just like, this
Something spilling over and you're
you got
like,
your love handles on, you got your body fat and everything. And the reality is you still probably look amazing compared to most people. And most people would like
right.
absolutely die to have a physique. But we're so hard on ourselves when it comes to conditioning and being in that actual suit itself. But posing is super important. Is there any other pieces of advice that you have for either someone that is thinking about getting into a fitness journey or thinking about stepping on stage for the first time?
Well, a couple things. Being a kind of like working with lifestyle clients and stuff like that myself. I would say, first of all, just because you're on a fitness journey does not mean that you need to compete, and understand the difference. Just you can be happy and not competing. I think I'm feeling this way more lately than ever before, and I think there's a couple of things with that. The sport has really kind of blown up quite a bit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like there's a lot of sort of reverberations that are happening because of that, and some of it I think is a notion that if you are on a fitness journey, then that means that you need to be stepping on stage, or that you should. Lifestyle and competition are two different things, two completely different things. So I think at first it would be just to kind of like figure out what you want to do. And if you don't want to compete, you don't have to. It's a sport. Like, it's not for everyone. So figuring that out. And then if you do want to compete, if you decide that you do want to compete, do your research. Like, seriously, do your research. I see so often girls that they just have followed a couple of competitors on Instagram, or like they saw somebody's YouTube video or something like that, and then they don't research their coaches. They don't really understand the sport itself, but they think that they do. They don't really know posing, but they've watched a couple of YouTube videos, so they're going to use that instead. And it's you really, if you want to compete, do your research on the history of the sport, on the division that you're interested in, do your history on, or, do your research on your coaches and what their resumes are, because you're actually hiring somebody that's going to be in charge of your health, which you can damage long-term health by competing. So make sure that you are doing your research on who you're going to get to coach you. And then even with posing, make sure that the person that you hire, because this is expensive, this is your money that you're putting into this. Don't just hire somebody that has a pro card and an IFBB behind their name. Like, make sure that there's somebody that are keeping up with the sport. They're keeping up with the trends of bikini, if it's the bikini division you want to compete in, because posing for bikini, I mean, Savannah, when I started in 2017, you said you started in 2017 too. The front pose was completely different, and the back pose was still okay to cross your legs. Like, I mean, it's completely changed. And if you don't have somebody that's staying up on the trends and where you're going, you're wasting your money. So I would say the first part piece of advice is if you want to compete or not, and understanding it's okay that you don't have to compete. And then the second piece of advice would be if you choose to compete, spend your time doing your research on everything, like everything.
Yes, I agree. Like it seems flashy and it seems fun, but it is a very serious sport. It is hard. It is hard to be disciplined, and some people don't have that discipline or lifestyle to do this. Like, can you afford with your job, whatever you're doing, family, stress, can you actually afford to maybe be 3 hours in the gym at the end?
Yeah.
Can you afford 2 hours in the gym every single week? Can you afford competing in general because it's super expensive? Know how much it's going to cost because it is an investment. Is that something that you want to spend your money on? Is this isn't a sport that I would suggest doing the cheap way because it is your health. Your
Mhm.
health is not something that you should be trying to do it on a budget. Yes, be, budget minded, but when it comes to your health and your mental health, when you choose someone that's you're going to literally give them your health in their hands, and you better hope that that person knows what they're doing. So that is just my advice too, because I do see it all the time. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I think this is a great episode and I'm excited to get it out. And if anyone wants to either work with you or follow you online, where can they do that?
Instagram is at Evolve Stronger. That's the easiest way to reach me. And then if you're in the Olympia area, I work out of Transformation Fitness. That's the fitness studio that I work at.
Right. First, well, I guess lastly, are you team cupcake? Are you team protein shake?
I would say protein shake if it's devotion protein.
Oh, okay. What flavor?
Brownie batter is my favorite from Devotion, and you can like legitimately you can make it like ice cream. So that's why I would say that. But if not Devotion protein, then I would totally pick the cupcake.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your story.
Thanks, Savannah.